Mr. Speaker, sir, these are the challenges for the next generation of leaders. To continue to grow Singapore, reinventing our economy, creating new possibilities for the future. To ensure that Singapore is always a land of opportunity, a meritocratic, fair and just society. To hold Singaporeans together in one cohesive society. Can the next generation of leaders build on our shared experiences of 50 years and maintain the sense of collective mission? Can they work to improve the lives of Singaporeans and not the lives of all Singaporeans and not the interests of narrow groups, so that they pass on an even stronger and more united Singapore? I think they can. The 4G team is now in place. They're overseeing their own portfolios and projects. They're explaining their ideas to Singaporeans. They're implementing policies and making them work. Many of them joined in the last 3 general elections from 2006 onwards, so about over the last 12 years. I've also promoted promising backbenchers to become office holders, including in the recent reshuffle. It's a strong team of able men and women with a balanced combination of skills and strengths. They are gaining experience, they're willing to serve, and most importantly, their hearts are in the right place. We need new leaders for each generation, from each generation. Because each generation has its own challenges to tackle and tough choices to make. The electorate will be different, the economic landscape will be different, the international order may well also be different. Some hard truths will always remain for Singapore. But even old problems may need new solutions. We must be pragmatic and not ideological in our approach. Keep an open mind and make decisions both with the head and the heart. Remember our history, but don't be trapped by it. And that's why leadership renewal is crucial. New ideas, new bonds, and new connections are needed with every new generation. Last week at the reopening of Parliament, I had a chance to chat with Mr. Loh Teck Yang. Somebody snapped a picture of us, and the Workers' Party posted a smiling photo of 2 of us on their Facebook page. It was a nice picture. What were we talking about? I think Mr. Loh won't mind me sharing. I asked him. The Workers' Party is having a leadership transition too. What will change now that the WP has a new leader? And he replied, nothing much. We, the WP, have our role. These things should not change suddenly. Don't you agree? I agreed with Mr. Loh. As an opposition party, the Workers' Party plays a role in our political system, whoever is their party leader. Opposition parties keep Singapore politics contestable. In other words, the ruling party, the PAP, does not have a monopoly of power, does not have the right to rule Singapore indefinitely. So long as the PAP government performs, it keeps the voters' support, it stays in power, and the opposition cannot gain ground. But if the PAP government becomes incompetent or corrupt, then of course the opposition will grow. So our system gives the PAP government, gives any government, every incentive to perform and to keep the opposition performing its role where it is, namely in the opposition. The PAP is determined to perform. We treat every election as a serious contest. We take every debate in the House seriously. And that's why we amended the Constitution to ensure that there will be always at least 12 opposition and NC MPs in the House, whatever the outcome of the general election. Political parties do not have a fixed lifespan, a time to live and a time to die, as Ecclesiastes might put it. How long a political party continues in government, or in opposition for that matter, because parties come and go in opposition too, depends whether it can renew itself, continue to serve the people, continue to bring progress to the nation. If the PAP can keep on successfully doing that, we can stay in government. But if we ever fail, we deserve to lose. So my message to all PAP MPs is, work hard, serve the people, hold the ground, win the elections. This doesn't mean the government will shy away from difficult problems. A government must govern. And if ministers are not prepared to govern, then give it up. Because that's your duty, that's what you're here for. And governing means that from time to time, you have to do difficult things when they become necessary. Leadership means that you've got to explain, persuade, convince people that you know what you're doing and that you're doing it for a good reason and it's the right thing to do. That's the way to maintain people's trust, and trust is crucial. Take taxes. In the recent Malaysian election, one hot issue was their GST. The previous government had introduced a new GST tax 3 years ago, and it had caused great unhappiness in Malaysia. After Pakatan Harapan won the election, Dr. Mahathir announced that his new government would abolish the GST. Why did this happen? It wasn't because of the economic merits or demerits of the GST. From the economic point of view, the GST is better than the sales tax that it replaced. But politically, Malaysians linked the GST with other complaints they had with the previous government, and they rejected the explanations and the persuasions, and they said, no, I don't accept this, out with it. Does that mean that no government should ever raise taxes? Alas, that's not the real world. From time to time, the country will need to spend more on healthcare, on defense, on education, or something else. And if revenues are not enough, it will have no choice but to raise taxes. Then the government must convince the population that it is raising taxes for a good reason, for the right reason. And whether the voters accept that will depend not just on the arguments, but also, crucially, on whether they trust the government. Because with the arguments, for every right argument, you can produce 5 doubtful ones which look quite plausible. And during elections, there's no shortage of producers of such arguments. And people can get confused. Finally, they have to decide whom do they trust, what is their track record, do you want to put your future, your fate, your children's future in the hands of this team and believe that they have your best interests at heart. And if you do, you vote for them and you take all the things which need to be done as one bundle. Finally, voters have to trust the government to do the right thing on their behalf, even when it is painful. I think this is the right lesson to learn. Without trust, the government can't govern. It wouldn't dare to do painful but necessary things. And politics becomes the art of pandering, a bidding war between the parties. Who can give more? Who can offer more? You say you reduce the tax. I say I abolish the tax. Then you say I will give you a hong pao on top of that. And how to pay? Well, we can think about that after the elections. And the country goes downhill. The 4G ministers understand this. They've been working together, learning to complement one another's strengths and weaknesses, making decisions as a team, and taking collective responsibility for these decisions. To me, this working together is as important, if not more important, than the question of who will be the next PM. Because for the next PM, I know there's more than one qualified candidate. We are fortunate that this is so because it provides strength and depth to the team. Now, It's about the team coming to a consensus on the best option. But to work together as a team, that is not a choice because there's no other option. Whoever becomes the next PM, the team has to work closely together for him to succeed. And if they cannot or do not do so, then the next PM will fail, whoever he is. Even in the best of times, and certainly in times of severe crisis, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew did not run the country by himself. Neither did Mr. Goh Chok Tong, nor myself. One year Mr. Lee received the freedom of the City of London. In 1982, it was a grand occasion. They dressed up, he made a speech. He said, "I feel like a conductor at a concert, bowing to applause, but unable to turn around and invite the accomplished musicians in his orchestra to rise and receive the ovation for the music they have played. For running a government is not unlike running an orchestra, and no Prime Minister ever achieves much without an able team of players." I think I can speak for Mr. Goh Chok Tong when I say that we both feel the same way. All three of us were not sole leaders, but primus inter pares. That means first amongst equals. But the emphasis is we are equals, but you're just the first amongst equals. First amongst equals with our colleagues. We take their views, we take them seriously, we benefit from their advice and their abilities and their skills. We have fierce arguments as to what to do, but we are on a team together with strong enough bonds that we can deal with issues together. And there is leadership, but it is unforced. It has to be unforced leadership. The team accepts, respects, and knows that it has an important role to play. They are not there just to carry out orders. We were all fortunate. Singapore was fortunate that the PMs had such stalwart colleagues. Mr. Lee had a core team, very strong ministers supporting him. Goh Keng Swee, S. Rajaratnam, Lim Kim San, Hon Swee Sen, Osman Wok. ESM Goh had a talented team too. Ong Ting Cheong, Tony Tan, Wong Kan Seng, Jayakumar, Dana Balan, Abdullah Tamuji, George Yeo, just to name a few. If anything, ESM Goh's team was even more comprehensive than Mr. Lee's. And when I took over as Prime Minister, I inherited ESM Goh's strong team. And Mr. Goh himself stayed on, and we added talent to his team. Now he stepped down, I rely on my own core team, which now also includes several of the 4G ministers. So the next PM must have and will have his own stalwart colleagues too. His generation, and I hope also younger ones. I know everyone is anxious to know who the next PM will be. Well, the leader must command the respect and loyalty of his whole team. He must enjoy the support and confidence of the broad mass of Singaporeans. And these things take time. They cannot be forced. I do not believe we are ready to settle on a choice yet. Nor is it helpful to treat this either as a horse race or a campaign to lobby support for one or the other candidate. This is a team game. We want a strong, cohesive team so that Team Singapore is the winner. I have just reshuffled the cabinet. I've moved some ministers to new portfolios. I've expanded the responsibilities of others. The 4G ministers now helm 2/3 of the ministries. They have a major say in policies and the direction to take Singapore. Let's give them the time and space to do their own work, to work together in their new roles, and to get better known by the public. I'm confident that in the fullness of time, we will see a clear outcome and a leader will emerge from the process. Certainly, I expect this to happen before the next general election. For these 14 years as PM, I have been working with the 4G team, guiding them, assessing them, preparing them to take over the reins. When Heng Swee Keat rounded up the budget debate this year, I was happy to hear him describe the budget as one that not only meets the needs of today's generation, but also accounts for the needs of future generations. It showed that the 4G ministers understood that their deepest responsibility is to be a steward of Singapore. What does it mean, steward? The government is certainly not the owner of Singapore, but neither is it just the manager of Singapore. It is the steward. It's responsible for taking good care of the country, for holding it in trust, building it up, and handing it on in due time to future generations. The government must keep faith with past generations who gifted this country to us. It has to be responsible to the present generation who continue to build on what we have inherited. But above all, it must consider future generations whose lives and whose futures depend on us, the present generation. Depend on us thinking of their interests, acting on their behalf, making wise and far-sighted decisions to cause Singapore to endure and to flourish for many more years. I'm confident that when the time comes for me to hand over to a new Prime Minister, Singapore will be put into the hands of good stewards. We've built something truly special here in Singapore. Countries near and far look to Singapore as a model of governance and development. People want to live here, do business here. Even the US and the DPRK are planning to hold their meeting here. In many other countries, political leaders plan only up to the next election or the next crisis. But in Singapore, we're able to think beyond the immediate, beyond ourselves. We care about our community, our country, and our future. Our religious leaders, they visit temples, churches, mosques together. They give blessings on one another's milestone celebrations. Our neighbors and friends invite us over for makan during Chinese New Year, Deepavali, or Hari Raya. Our youth travel and experience the world. They come back eager to apply what they have seen and learned around the world back home. Our grandparents and our parents bring us up and nurture us. They are living examples of how, by working hard, we can build better lives for ourselves and our children. So we are all living the Singapore story, keeping it alive. We must sustain and pass on this shared vision of prospering together, progressing together. That way, we will make this little red dot shine bright in the world as well as in our hearts for many, many years to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.